Now, what do we want NATO to do in the world? Well, here's a list which is not exhaustive and not encyclopedic, and people might argue with elements of it. We need NATO to preserve peace and unity and democracy in Europe. No small task. When President Bush 41, President George H.W. Bush, when he presided over the end of the Cold War for the United States, he used to say, we want a Europe whole, free, and at peace, because Europe had not been any of those things for the 20th century, but even for the centuries prior to that. And now, because of the rise of the European Union and the power of NATO, Europe is whole, free, and at peace. NATO's first job is to keep things that way, and to never see again the continent divided, or never to see an autocratic totalitarian power try to exert its will, as the Soviet Union tried after the Second World War, on the rest of Europe. Second, we need Europe to stabilize the Balkans, because if you look at Europe, there is this pocket of very important countries, Serbia and Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina and Albania and Montenegro and others who have not seen the economic growth and development and prosperity or the political stability, who are still dealing with the breakup of the Soviet Union. You see, with Yugoslavia, you see that in Kosovo. And they need NATO and the European Union to help pull them out into prosperity and into peace. That's a second job for NATO. Third, we need to work with Russia. We may not like dealing with the Russians every day of the week, and I've got a lot of scars from my 3 decades dealing with the Russian government. But boy, we have to work with the Russians. They've been very difficult and I think cynical on Syria by vetoing the UN Security Council resolutions to help the Syrian people. So, on most days, I think their primary goal is to block the United States and Europe from doing things. I don't see a positive agenda in Moscow, but we need them for strategic arms reductions. And President Obama negotiated a very important reduction in strategic arms to START treaty with the Russian leadership. We need them on counterterrorism, where they've been helpful, on counter-narcotics, and we need them in Afghanistan, where they're helping to provide an avenue for the resupply of our troops. That's why when you have major presidential candidates, as we've had this week, say that Russia is the #1 adversary of the United States in the world, the #1 adversary? Al-Qaeda. 2, Iran. 3, North Korea. Russia? We disagree with Russia. Seriously, on human rights, on lack of democracy, on all sorts of issues. But we've got to work with Russia, and we can't demonize the Russian people or the Russian government. We spent too much time doing that in the past. We've got to be bridge builders and do our best to work with other countries. So that's important for NATO. And the NATO-Russia Council, Ivo and his colleagues work with the Russian ambassador and try their best to work with Russia. Fourth, NATO is with us in Afghanistan. We went in together on August 11th of 2003. Of course, the United States and Britain had been there since October 7th, 2001, shortly after 9/11. But it was a great day to see that the NATO allies volunteered. All of them have been there, and all of them have stuck it out. And it's been difficult, but it's important. And we have an agreement that NATO will stay in until 2014. Some countries, including our own, will have to stay beyond that to train the Afghan army, to deal with the terrorist problem on the Afghan-Pakistan border. But we would be in big trouble if we didn't have our NATO allies in Afghanistan. Next, NATO can help us not collectively as an institution, but the leading members of NATO are the leading members of the anti-counter-Iran coalition that President Bush and President Obama have built up. We have no stronger ally in Iran than Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president. He has made a real difference in the efforts to sanction and counter Iran, as has Angela Merkel, as have many other leaders of NATO and the European Union. We need NATO, individual NATO countries, to be with us in that. And we need NATO to be the world's most capable first responder. NATO's the strongest military force, the best trained in the world. And sometimes, and hopefully very infrequently, and with great reluctance, and only as a last resort, we deploy into battle together. Other times we respond to natural disasters. We train together because we want to be good peacekeepers, and of course NATO is still keeping the peace in Kosovo, and Europeans are still keeping the peace in Bosnia in the 2 wars that we ended together in the Balkans that President Clinton helped to end in the 1990s. So NATO's a first responder. NATO's fighting Somali pirates. that are a great danger to human life and international shipping off the coast of Africa and the Indian Ocean. And finally, NATO needs to reach out to the Arab governments, the new Arab governments in Tunisia, into Libya, where NATO did such good work last summer, in Egypt after the elections, to see if we can have modern cooperative relations with the Arab world and with Israel, so that NATO's reach is south, as well as east, as well as in the Middle East, as well as in South Asia. Those are just some of the reasons why NATO is vital and the jobs that NATO is doing for the American people and the European publics.